Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, based on your time, John. Welcome in Salesforce Epics Hour. My name is Amit Chaudhary, and I'm the host and the founder of the Epics Hour. And today topic is Salesforce diagramming. And we have a special guest from the Salesforce team, Salesforce Architect Evangelist team, Susannah. So let me hand over her for her introduction and for the session.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amit, and thank you everyone for joining wherever you are, or if you're watching this on recording. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with me today. My name is Susannah St-Germain, and I am a lead architect evangelist at Salesforce. And today I'm thrilled to be speaking with you about Salesforce diagrams and the Salesforce diagramming framework. Just a little bit about me before we get started. As I mentioned, I am an evangelist at Salesforce, but I'm also very lucky to be active in the community. I was a Salesforce MVP before joining Salesforce. I am still very active in the community as a co-lead of Ladies Be Architects and a Rad Women Code coach. And like many of you who are up early or up late on a Saturday, I'm passionate about continually learning. I have 22 Salesforce certifications, and I hope to pursue many more. So I think that's probably enough about me. Let's go ahead and dive into the session. But before we get kicked off, just a quick note about forward-looking statements, because I will be making some forward-looking statements during this presentation, which is very exciting. So just a quick reminder that you should be making your purchasing decisions based on the products and services that are currently available, and not any forward-looking exciting announcements I might be making today. So let's get down into the agenda. So this is what we're going to be covering today. We're going to be talking about the Salesforce diagramming framework. So we're going to talk a little bit about why diagrams and why this was a focus of the Salesforce Architect team this year. And also talk a little bit about what a framework is, because this diagramming, Salesforce diagrams is a framework as well as a set of tools. So it's important to understand the framework piece. We'll dive into something that's called the diagram kit of parts, and then talk about different diagram styles and diagram levels. And finally, we're going to bring it all together to show you some examples of how you can use the building blocks of Salesforce diagrams to create reusable, efficient, effective, understandable diagrams in both of the different styles that I'll cover. And I'll also do a bit of a small demo at the end to show you how you can start working with all of the tools that I show you today, right after we get off this call. So let's talk about why diagrams first. Many of you who are architects already know that there are a ton of available models and languages and tools to build diagrams that already exist. And if you're an architect, you're probably already creating tons of diagrams yourself already. But until now, there hasn't been a standard for Salesforce diagrams, and there hasn't been a lot of guidance coming out from Salesforce on how to build the best diagrams possible. So as part of the diagramming framework creation, what we wanted to do was to determine which diagrams really drive value. And so to do that, we did a listening tour, and we talked to lots of internal and external stakeholders. And we also wanted to understand which diagrams were most often used. And ultimately, we wanted to create a standard for architectural diagrams that is specifically suited to the Salesforce landscape. And just a couple tidbits about the diagramming framework before we get into it. This is something that we're using internally at Salesforce as well. It's not just built for the ecosystem to use. We're going to be rebuilding the ERDs that exist now in like the SOAP API documentation that are pretty outdated and maybe not the most beautiful diagrams you've ever seen. We're going to be using this diagramming framework to refresh those. And so we'll be using them internally as well as enabling our ecosystem of partners and customer architects to use this diagramming framework. And ultimately, it's built so that anyone can build an accurate and understandable Salesforce diagramming with a distinctive, cohesive look and feel. And from my perspective personally, really the ultimate goal is to drive greater efficiency and coherence in architectural conversations about Salesforce. So that's why diagrams. And now I've already said the word framework probably like 5 times already. So just so we're all level set and to understand what I mean, particularly when we're talking about the diagramming framework, let's take a look at what Google has to say about frameworks. So framework, according to the Oxford Languages definition provided by Google, is either an essential supporting structure of a building, vehicle, or object, so supporting structure, or a basic structure underlying a system, concept, or text. And what you'll see in both of these definitions is that it's a supporting structure and an underlying a system, concept, or text. So with Salesforce diagrams, we have a similar definition, really. The framework that I'm going to be talking about and showing you are really underlying structures or building blocks that make Salesforce diagrams easier to build and more predictable to be able to consume and read and understand. So these building blocks are consist of a couple of different things. And the first building block, and really the most basic building block of the diagramming framework, is something that we refer to as the diagram kit of parts. So you'll see this term thrown around a lot, kit of parts. So the first thing that I will show you is what exactly is contained in the kit of parts and how you can use these different pieces to build better diagrams. And one note, during the demo, I'll show you this, but just so you're not wondering the entire time while I'm talking, today these pieces are available to you via Google Slides and PowerPoint, and in the knock on wood Dreamforce framework, Dreamforce timeline, they should be available in Lucidchart as well, so that you can use all of these pieces and templates directly in Lucidchart, where a lot of you I know are already building your diagrams. Okay, with that out of the way. The first part of the kit of parts is the header. So this is sort of a, I don't know, it's not the most unobvious thing, but it's an important piece of all diagrams that you should be creating, is this consistent header. Let's take a look at what the header is comprised of. So your header, as you can see, has a space for your logo. So up here, there's a space for your logo. There's also a diagram title. Again, it's sort of a no-brainer, but something that when we're writing and building diagrams on the fly, sometimes we don't even think about. Your diagram should always have a title so that your reader knows exactly what they're looking at. And especially when you're creating diagrams for documentation purposes that might outlive you at a particular job or on a particular project, it's important to have a description of what the diagram is as well. So not just the title, but the description of exactly what you're looking at. And you'll see there's, in the kit of parts, there's 2 variants, and you'll see a lot of variants of some of these pieces. One for a shorter title, one for a longer title, and then one for a key. And we'll look at some examples of what you can put in your header key. But there's an example with a smaller key and then a larger key if you have a lot of information you need to put into there. This is a building, again, just a basic building block of a diagram that we're going to put together, and we're going to see all in one piece in just a little bit. So another basic building block, and one of the most important building blocks in the Salesforce kit of parts, is the concept of a card. So let's take a look at what this cards and connectors concept looks like. And let's make sure that my slides are advancing. Okay, there we go. So there's the concept of cards and connectors. So let's take a look at cards first. So these cards are essentially where you're going to store information about different entities that you're diagramming. So you might have a card. So we have detailed cards and container cards. And a card might be maybe a particular cloud. If we're looking at like a system landscape as an example, you might have a card for your sales cloud and for your service cloud. Or you might have a card that is, if you're talking about maybe a data model instead, your card might look more like this with the name of the API name of the object and attributes, maybe like fields about the particular object that you're talking about. And we also have the concept of container cards. So container cards would show, again, if we're talking about a system landscape, you might have a container card that shows Salesforce as the outer container. And then inside you would have the different clouds or the different solutions involved in your Salesforce system landscape portion. So we're going to see how we use cards, but cards are very key to the Salesforce diagramming landscape. And then again, a bit of something you guys have seen before. Likely this is not, not new news. And I don't know what's going on with my slide advancement, but there it is. Our connectors. So the way that we connect our cards are via either relationship connectors, and these use the traditional crow's feet annotation that's available. Again, if you're using Lucidchart, even if you're using something like PowerPoint or Google Slides today, you'll notice that you're able to use crow's feet connectors to display one-to-many or many-to-many or one-to-many relationships. So this is just an example of the relationship connectors. Something to call out here is that our recommendation is to use these pillboxes for your text instead of having text like outside the line or having text in line. You'll see a lot of use of these pillboxes when we look at the examples. And we have two different styles. So the default style is the solid line, and the alternative style is the dotted line. And I'll show you some examples of how you can use these two different styles to represent different things depending on what you're diagramming. That's connectors. And then we'll go into the final bit of the kit of parts, which is my favorite part, and is, I think, something that's going to make a lot of architects' lives more easy, is a suite of icons that are going to be available to you. Again, they're available to you today in Google Slides and PowerPoint, and in the not so distant future in Lucidchart. So no more hunting for or Googling for product icons. You're going to have access to all of the product icons so that you can drop them into your diagrams and use them as you need. You'll see that there's a couple variants. So depending on the styling of your particular diagram, you might want to use one over the other. But we have product icons for all of the products. This is a subset of the products, but once we move to Lucidchart, you'll have access to every single product that we have. All of the icons will be available for you to use. And as well, we have a series of platform icons. So if you're trying to describe a mobile experience or a web experience, icons here. If you're trying to talk about intelligence, things like using Einstein, maybe workflow or personalization, there's icons for that, as well as icons for what we're referring to as the single source of truth. So you have a data icon, stream, segments, and privacy. And then the final subset of icons that I'll point out are industry icons. So this is pretty cool. If you're diagramming a specific industry solution and you want to show that, yes, you're working with NPSP, or maybe you're working with the financial services cloud, you have a diagram that, or an icon that you can use in your diagram for that as well, and just grab and drop into the templates that I'm about to show you. Before we move into the templates, just a very quick note on diagram styles. As I mentioned at the beginning, we did a lot of research before creating this diagramming framework. And one of the things that we heard over and over is that good architectural diagrams assist with communicating to the right audience in the right way. And for that reason, there are two different diagram styles that we are advocating that help to tell two different types of stories, whether you're talking to a marketing, sales, and strategy audience, or you're doing documentation and implementation. And the way I like to think about this is you will be working in this area of diagrams, the marketing, sales, and strategy on the left, usually at the beginning of a project when you're trying to get buy-in and sell a vision for maybe some sort of technical some sort of new project, maybe buying into a new cloud, and you're talking to business and executive stakeholders. Whereas at the end of the project or in the middle of the project, when you're building, when you're working with technical audiences, you're really going to be using these documentation and implementation diagrams. And we'll take a look at some quick examples of each of them so you understand the main differences. But these are two different styles. Again, these are building blocks of building great diagrams, so part of the framework. And then the final part of the framework that you can use and lean on to build better diagrams is the concept of diagram levels. So we have two different styles, and within each of these styles, there are 4 levels of different detail that you can choose to draw upon depending on what you're trying to convey. So the 4 levels of detail here, and they move from highest level of complexity to least level of complexity, and littlest granularity to finest granularity. So these levels are based on the C4 model for visualizing software architecture. And as I mentioned, as you move from level 1 to level 4, you're really zooming in to finer grain levels of detail and reduced complexity. And what this allows you to do is to more efficiently and effectively communicate with the appropriate audience the right level of detail at the right time. Okay, so enough with the framework concepts. Let's dive into some examples of what these diagrams look like. So since we have a technical audience here today, I wanted to start with the documentation and implementation diagrams. These are ones that you guys are probably already building. So we'll show you how they translate into the Salesforce diagramming framework. So first off, we're starting with the level 1, the big picture. And at this level, this diagram is showing a wide view of the system landscape. We have our logo, we have our header, right, which is very important to have on each of the diagrams. I have a title for my, my diagrams called the system landscape. And I'm also showing a brief description of what this particular system landscape is showing. And just some highlights at this level. We're showing the suite of products that are involved. So you can see that we're using MuleSoft, we're using Marketing Cloud and a lot of different clouds. But you'll notice that even though we're showing a lot of the different pieces of products and technology that are involved, we're not showing a lot of details. And this is on purpose because this level 1 and the big picture is trying to clearly convey the big picture without overwhelming a viewer. So this sample system landscape, and this is we'll dive in from this particular fictional example, or it is a real solution, but fictional scenario. This system landscape is showing a B2C commerce solution. And it's indicating really the mix of Salesforce products and other technologies involved in the implementation. And here you can see that our key that we looked at before, we had a blank key. What we're showing with the key here is non-Salesforce products versus Salesforce products, and also native connections, so where we don't need to build a custom integration and where we do need to build a custom integration. We're not yet talking about what type of integration it is. We're just showing at a high level the mix of products and technology. That's level one. And then we dive in, when we dive in down one more level, what we're doing is seeing what's called a piece of the whole. That's what we refer to it as. And similar to the level above, diagrams at this level 2 show aspects of a solution overview or a system landscape. But here we're not seeing the entire solution. We're diving deep on one particular piece. And in this case, the piece is the integration layer. So we're seeing how this particular solution, the B2C commerce solution, how the integrations are involved. And we're only seeing the products. You'll notice that we had like Marketing Cloud in service on the other diagram. What we're seeing here are only the products that are involved in integration, because we're showing the integration layer. So examples you might of the details you might see at a level 2, if you're wondering if you're looking at a level 1 or 2, include the key integration points or general direction of data flows. And you can really see that in this diagram. We're showing only the products and technologies directly involved in the integration layer. And while we see some details about the behavior, so we can see that you can see that we're using specific types of APIs. So we're using experience APIs from MuleSoft here, and here we're integrating user information. We don't see specific details about a specific API or the data types or what fields might be involved. And that's because that's reserved for level 3 diagrams. Let's take a look at that. So this level 3 diagram is double clicking on our identity and access integration flow. So just to flip back and highlight again. So we're really double clicking here on this identity and access integration flow and getting to the nitty gritty details and looking at this processor interaction view. So here we're seeing user provisioning and deprovisioning. So I can see, again, a greater level of detail. And you can know if you're looking at a level 3 versus a level 2, if you're seeing these time-based interactions. So I can see that first there's a manual input of a user status, and then there's a post out to the system API at MuleSoft. So this level 3 again is showing only a specific subset. It's showing time-based interactions, and you're only seeing the products or technology that are directly involved in the process, along with greater detail about the order of the steps and the behavior of the flow. Okay, so that's level 3, and let's take a look at level 4, our final sort of drill down, and this is what we call the double click. So diagrams at level 4 show the most specific detail about a piece of a solution or system. So in most cases, as you probably saw in our diagram and our documentation and implementation diagramming framework, level 1 is going to be your system landscape. The level 4 is often going to be your data model. And so what you're seeing here is something to point out is you're not seeing which product mix or product icons. You're really showing the greatest level of detail around the technical aspect so that someone can take a look at this and go and actually build the solution. So continuing with our B2C commerce example, this level 4 diagram shows the part of the data model. It's not the entire data model. It's showing the part of the data model involved in the solution. And you can see that it's using this larger key right up here to show some really, really specific detail. One thing I want to point out is the different use of cards as well. So we have our card with attributes. So I have an order object and there's different attributes, which are the fields. I'm using what's called a footer, a metadata footer on the card to show information about, in this case, the owner, so who owns the record. And then I'm using icons that are represented in my key to indicate whether to indicate the org-wide default. So this is controlled by parent. I can see that this is public read only down here, and that this is private. This invoices object is private. I'm also using shading again, just as an example, standard objects versus custom objects. And I am using the connectors that we showed from the kit of parts to show cardinality. So I can see account and order is one to many. I also have this nice little data skew icon that I can add to my connector to show that there is the opportunity to have data skew here with a lot of orders potentially connected to an account. Okay, so that is the documentation and implementation style, and a deep dive sort of into how the different kit of parts or building blocks go into one of our diagramming templates. I'm going to sort of lightning fast go through the other style, the marketing, sales, and strategy diagrams, just to show you sort of the difference between the two. And then we'll do a very brief demo of how you can get started, and then we'll be passing it off to the second part of today's Apex Hours. So this is level 1 in the marketing, sales, and strategy. You'll see that this is very different. It's not showing how the different products are connected or necessarily any really technical detail. Well, what it's really showing is the art of the possible, and it's showing business capabilities and high-level product positioning. But again, not many details. And you'll often see this type of diagram. You'll see Salesforce create this type of diagram. And it's sort of lovingly or not lovingly referred to as marketecture. It's sort of a combination of marketing and architecture. But there is this diagram comes in handy to convey, again, this high-level detail. And in our fictional scenario, it's showing the mix of products for a retail, commerce, digital transformation, and really showing the vision of how it might all come together. That's a level 1 for marketing, sales, and strategy. Level 2 for marketing, sales, and strategy, again, same thing, piece of the whole. So we're going from the entire universe, the art of the possible, down to one particular business capability. And in this case, we're showing, this level 2 is showing the order on behalf solution. So that's a pattern that's available on our architect website, showing how you might do an order on behalf solution in a B2C commerce scenario. And here we're only seeing the products involved in this capability. We're seeing some supporting relationships at a high level, but we're not seeing specific details again about their behavior. And in the level 3, we're getting more detail. We're if you remember from our level 3 from documentation and implementation, you know it's a level 3 because there's these time-based interactions. I can see what happens first and the process of first a customer contacts service, and then XYZ happens. So understanding this time-based interactions is a key differentiator between a level 2 and a level 3 diagram. And then finally, a level 4 is the double click down into the actual flow. So we're showing the most level of detail about not just the order on behalf process. And let me just point this out so I drive the point home. We're not just showing the entire order on behalf process, which we work here. In the double click, what we're doing is we're showing the order on behalf process if someone uses this live chat snap-in. So we're double clicking down into a very specific process, and it has that time-based interactions, but it's talking about a very specific process. Okay, so we've seen a lot. I know this was a bit of a whirlwind, but now I want to show you how you can get started today with a very brief demo of just where these resources are located. So I am going to pop out of my slides, and let's see if this will let me. Yeah, let me go ahead and reshare. And share. So how to get started. The best place to get started is at the Architect homepage, or the Architect digital home at architect.salesforce.com. And to find the templates and the kit of parts that I showed you today, the first thing is to go to design. I can click on design and go into resources and templates. And what I'm going to find is some information about how to build Salesforce diagrams. I have a link to that on the final slide as well. But you'll see the diagram kit of parts, as well as the 2 different templates we discussed. And for each of these, if I click into any of these, you'll get a bit of supporting information and also the ability to copy these resources into Google Slides. And as I mentioned, hopefully in the Dreamforce timeline, forward-looking statement, all of these resources will also be available for you in Lucidchart in their standard shapes library. Okay, I know that was a very brief demo, but to close us out before we pass it over to Melissa, one last thing, just parting information before we stop. Let me go back to the slides. And let's see you can see my, hold on. Let's go back to slides. There we go. Okay. So resources to learn more. I know this was a lot of information all at once, but there's a lot of resources if you want to learn more about a particular strategy, documentation style. So we have a whole showhead live on how to build marketing strategy and sales diagrams, one on the documentation and implementation diagrams. You saw on the website, there's an article on how to build Salesforce diagrams, which reviews some of the information that we went over today. And then also, if you're curious, which I'm sure you are, about the Salesforce and Lucidchart partnership, all of the information about that partnership is available in this blog here, bringing consistency and speed to diagrams with Salesforce and Lucidchart. So that will be available to you as well. And with that, I just want to thank you for your time. I hope that you learned a little bit, and I will go ahead and pass it off back to Amit for the rest of the Apex Hours presentation. So thank you so much.